The boy casually bought a talent at the god's convenience store. With it, he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the gods while still in a mortal body. If lucky enough, he could even trigger a buy one get one free deal. That meant Zhiliao Chun might one day become capable of slaying gods. Yet just 3 days ago, Zhiliao Chun was still a high schooler wasting his days away. On that day, Zhiliao Chun finally gathered the courage to confess to the school beauty, Lu Ruyan. Zhiliao Chun also asked her to team up with him in a game. To his surprise, Lu Ruyan agreed instantly, but on one condition. Zhiliao Chun had to play as the team's healer. After returning home, Zhiliao Chun wasted no time. He immediately put on his gaming helmet. In the next instant, Zhiliao Chun's body was pulled into a virtual space. It was a hyper-realistic game sweeping across the globe. A virtual world built upon myths and legends from around the world. Players could immerse themselves in endless adventures. The game offered 12 classes to choose from. Zhiliao Chun guessed that the healer Lu Ruyan mentioned must be this support class. In Zhiliao Chun's heart, he thought this had to count as his first date with Xiao Mei. So Zhiliao Chun deliberately chose a suit as his starter outfit. The next second, a bolt of lightning streaked across the sky like a silver serpent. Immediately, a surge of unstoppable energy coursed through the wires and into Zhiliao Chun's body. The searing pain blurred Zhiliao Chun's consciousness in an instant. As the data finished loading, Zhiliao Chun found himself standing in the middle of a barren desert. It felt as if a powerful energy had just slammed into Zhiliao Chun's head, like an electric shock, tingling and numb. Zhiliao Chun slowly stood up and gazed into the distance. Although this was Zhiliao Chun's first time playing the game, he knew the starter area should have an NPC town. The realism was staggering. Zhiliao Chun quickly typed Xiaomei's in-game name into the search bar. But 2.5 seconds later, the system returned, no player found. Yet Zhiliao Chun was certain Xiaomei's ID was correct. It couldn't be wrong. In that case, Zhiliao Chun decided to head to the starter village and meet her there. But after walking for several hours, Zhiliao Chun still hadn't made it out of the desert. Aside from losing contact with Xiaomei, Zhiliao Chun's link to customer support was also completely severed. A creeping dread surfaced. What if the starter village didn't exist at all? In this blistering heat, Zhiliao Chun could pass out from dehydration at any moment. Zhiliao Chun hurriedly pulled up the logout panel. The screen replied, "Logout unavailable." Refusing to accept it, Zhiliao Chun hammered the logout button again and again. The system then issued a new quest: survive in this desert. Reward: unknown. Penalty: unknown. In the hours that followed, Zhiliao Chun tried everything he could think of, yet he still couldn't escape this cursed place. Was Zhiliao Chun really going to be trapped here forever? The quest's vague reward might be the key to getting out. Zhiliao Chun decided to obey it and focus on survival. Under the scorching sun, Zhiliao Chun's body slipped into severe dehydration. Zhiliao Chun recalled a bald survivalist on a TV show saying that natural springs often appear near limestone. Following the line of rocks, Zhiliao Chun pressed on. He failed to notice a drooling beast head rising behind him. Soon, Zhiliao Chun discovers spring. Zhiliao Chun lunged forward and gulped down mouthfuls of water. After replenishing himself, Zhiliao Chun opened the system panel, thinking hard about how to survive here. Next, Zhiliao Chun opened the starter gift pack. To his surprise, despite picking a healer, a support class, the system granted him a longsword as his starter weapon. That was a lifesaver. If it had been just a healing staff, Zhiliao Chun could hardly have survived in this environment. Besides, in the real world, Zhiliao Chun was the youngest 6th-rank swordsman in the Dragon Nation. Zhiliao Chun then headed deeper into the cave. What he saw made his stomach churn. Piles upon piles of bones carpeted the ground. Zhiliao Chun had most likely stepped into a beast's lair. Too careless. He should have scouted first. The moment Zhiliao Chun turned his head, a monstrous creature lunged at him with jaws agape. Zhiliao Chun dropped into a crouch on reflex, slipping past the ambush. The HUD identified the beast, desert-exclusive monster, / desert wolf. Built for speed, outrunning it was impossible. Zhiliao Chun would have to stand and fight. Zhiliao Chun drew his freshly acquired starter longsword. He crashed in with a low shoulder check, sliding past the wolf's claw swipe. As it pivoted, Zhiliao Chun chopped straight down. Clang! A crack split across the blade. Needles of numbness shot through Zhiliao Chun's hands. The wolf capitalized, whipping its tail as it closed the gap. A heartbeat later, Zhiliao Chun smashed into the stone wall behind him. System tip: tactics. Beyond speed, the desert wolf's defense is formidable. Attacks from lower-level players are nullified. Only strikes to the exposed belly deal damage. That explained it. It had been guarding its stomach every exchange. The wolf surged again, triggering bite. Even knowing the weak spot, the speed gap left Zhiliao Chun no opening to reach the belly. With his HP scraping bottom and one hit from defeat, an idea struck Zhiliao Chun. Zhiliao Chun stepped in and deliberately offered his right shoulder. Instinct took over. The wolf clamped down without hesitation. In the same instant, Zhiliao Chun's sword drove clean through its abdomen. A column of golden light descended, wrapping Zhiliao Chun as disbelief flickered across his face. No wonder players swarmed this game, leveling up instantly full healed, a killer perk in early progression. One thing nagged at Zhiliao Chun: the hidden shop icon at the bottom left of the UI. What was it? After a beat, Zhiliao Chun tapped enter. In a flash, a cascade of gold-tier gear materialized before Zhiliao Chun. So this was a so-called hidden shop. Beyond the weapons before him, different kinds of items could be unlocked at each level stage. Then, Zhiliao Chun's finger accidentally tapped the mercenary shop at the very bottom. In an instant, countless beams of golden light rained down. Statues of gods in every form lined up before Zhiliao Chun. Offensive types, defensive types, magical types, assassin types. But that last one, support type, felt downright absurd. Was the system planning to make Zhiliao Chun spend his life alone in this cursed place? A prompt popped up. Player only meets requirements to unlock daily goods. Unlock now? Did he even need to ask? Only a fool would refuse. Once the access was granted, Zhiliao Chun immediately pulled food from the shop to fill his stomach. At the same time, Zhiliao Chun opened the stat allocation panel. From what he knew, point distribution was critical. It defined a player's entire growth path. And from the fight just now, Zhiliao Chun realized one truth. Though he was only 5 levels below the desert wolf, the gap in strength and speed was like worlds apart. If he faced stronger beasts, victory would require absolute dominance in power and agility. So Zhiliao Chun chose to allocate his stats: 5 constitution, 10 strength, 10 agility. 5 points of constitution to keep his HP from bottoming out, 10 in strength for instant kill potential, and 10 in agility to match most monsters' speed. Suddenly, a wolf's howl shattered the silence. Zhiliao Chun turned, realizing the stench of the slain wolf must have drawn its pack. Yet even when dozens of desert wolves appeared, Zhiliao Chun felt no fear at all. Zhiliao Chun felt no fear. Only his battle lust surging to the peak. His strikes tore straight through the wolves' defenses. With each slash, another fell in a single blow. This had to be the effect of his boosted stats, which also sharpened Zhiliao Chun's swordsmanship. With a roar, silver light enveloped Zhiliao Chun as he rampaged through the pack like an unstoppable storm. When the carnage ended, Zhiliao Chun's level shot up to 15. It was clear now, grinding monsters to raise his stats was the only way to survive the desert. As midnight came, Zhiliao Chun emerged from the wolves' den. The night lacked the scorching heat of day, making it the perfect time to search for a way out. Suddenly, Zhiliao Chun's left foot bumped into something furry. Looking up, he found a heap of wasteland wolf corpses. The sight sent a chill of shock through Zhiliao Chun. Could someone else also be trapped here? Judging from the wolf's condition, that person must be terrifyingly strong. At the cliff's edge, a humanoid figure was tossing wolf bodies into the abyss. But by the time Zhiliao Chun reached the cliff, the figure had vanished. Examining the corpses, Zhiliao Chun noticed one shared trait. They were shriveled dry, as though their blood had been completely drained. At that thought, a wave of indescribable fear surged through Zhiliao Chun. Could something this cruel even be called human? Trapped here like him, this being was far more terrifying than any desert wolf. Suddenly, a Crimson System alert flared. High-level life form detected. Player must evacuate immediately. The warning snapped Zhiliao Chun around. From the ground, a tentacle oozing blood droplets emerged. Then, a creature unlike anything he had ever seen stepped forward. Zhiliao Chun's body trembled uncontrollably. This was the innate suppression of a high-tier predator. If not for his boosted agility from leveling up, that tentacle would have pierced him already. Before his eyes, the creature's severed arm regenerated into a new hand. The system displayed its name, the Wandering Dominator. The apex predator of the desert, unmatched in speed, feeding on monster flesh, sitting atop the food chain. Cold sweat poured down Zhiliao Chun's forehead. This monster was overwhelmingly strong. Even after giving his all, Zhiliao Chun was crushed beneath its aura. For the first time in his life, Zhiliao Chun felt true fear. In a blink, the Dominator's figure closed the distance. Zhiliao Chun twisted aside, barely dodging the crushing fist. Using the momentum, he leapt behind it. He swung his long sword down with full force. But the next instant, only an afterimage lingered before his eyes. The real body had already shifted to Zhiliao Chun's flank, its fist blasting toward his face. The force slammed into him like a landslide, sending Zhiliao Chun flying backward again and again. No wonder the system called it the absolute master of speed. Its swiftness was monstrous. Then, the Dominator's mouth formed a few garbled words. A second later, it drove another fist into Zhiliao Chun's gut. Blood spewed from his mouth in a violent spray. That blow could have killed him outright. But the Dominator had deliberately held back. Under Zhiliao Chun's confused gaze, it crouched down. It even handed back the long sword it had knocked away. Then it gestured across its own throat, signaling Zhiliao Chun to strike. A chill shot down Zhiliao Chun's spine. This creature was playing a game of cat and mouse. Most of the time, when a cat catches a mouse, it doesn't eat it right away. It toys with it first, savoring the thrill of tormenting its prey. That was exactly what the Dominator did, tormenting Zhiliao Chun until dawn. By then, Zhiliao Chun was utterly exhausted, his weapon durability dropping to below 10%. He collapsed onto the ground, bitterly admitting to himself, the creature was far too strong. With his current agility, he couldn't keep up at all. The Dominator strode forward and seized Zhiliao Chun by the collar. It lifted him high into the air. Then, speaking in human tongue, it sneered, "So this is humanity, living like ants, so pitiful and small." Before its words even faded, a dazzling sword light flashed across its chest. "Bastard, you're nothing but a worm strutting in the desert." With those words, human dignity reignited Zhiliao Chun's fighting spirit. He thought of his mother, thought of his friends. He would not die here. Zhiliao Chun's grip tightened on his long sword, the blade gleaming sharp beneath the crackle of lightning. With a thunderous boom, a silver bolt split the dark sky wide open. In that moment, Zhiliao Chun stood like a war god returned from some ancient battlefield, his body unshakable as iron. System prompt. Player Zhiliao Chun's battle has reached its peak. Blessing of Latinea, Desert God activated. All stats, plus 100%. The Dominator looked at him, and for the first time, a satisfied expression appeared. "Good. You're the most interesting human I've encountered in 100 years." Driven by murderous intent, Zhiliao Chun poured that killing will into his blade. His swordsmanship rose to a height it had never reached before. With a mighty swing, Zhiliao Chun's strike crashed into the Dominator. Slash! Blood burst from the creature's mouth. A dark glint flashed in Zhiliao Chun's eyes. In the next instant, their moves clashed violently, filling the battlefield with flashing blades and shadows. When his weapon durability finally hit zero, Zhiliao Chun cast aside his longsword, sinking his elbow low. His body shot forward, left fist cracking out like lightning. With a single punch, the Dominator staggered back in defeat. Fist as blade, wind as edge, body as vessel. At that moment, Zhiliao Chun fused swordsmanship into his fists, the feral gleam in his eyes utterly chilling. Yet when he reached the spot where the Dominator had fallen, only tumbling rocks remained. Then, a suffocating aura surged from behind. Foolish human, the game of cat and mouse ends now. From the Dominator's back, several writhing tentacles sprouted. It had entered its enraged second form. The creature floated above the ground, cradling a dark violet orb in its palm. Above its head, the spectral figure of a reaper emerged. Numb with despair, Zhiliao Chun accepted the truth. He had used every last move, and still he could not win. The next instant, the Dominator swung its massive hand. Overhead, the reaper mirrored it, cleaving down with its scythe. Zhiliao Chun spread his arms wide, helpless, blood spilling from his lips. "Forgive me, mother. I couldn't survive after all." System alert. Voice detected. Player Zhiliao Chun HP has dropped to 0, entering death state. When consciousness returned, Zhiliao Chun realized he hadn't truly died. He was inside a shabby little house. For a moment, his heart surged with excitement. He thought he had finally returned to reality. But when he looked out the window, the scene beyond was nothing like the real world. Yet the game interface hadn't disappeared. That meant Zhiliao Chun was still trapped inside the game world. But he had clearly been killed by the Dominator. By the game's rules, he should have been forcefully logged out, even if he couldn't return to reality. He shouldn't still be stuck here like this. Stranger still, every wound on Zhiliao Chun's body had completely healed. Just then, a red-haired girl pushed the door open. When she saw Zhiliao Chun awake, her expression flickered with panic. Their eyes met, and silence filled the room with awkward tension. A moment later, she turned and left. When she returned, an old man followed behind her. It turned out that this elder, named Ubule, had found Zhiliao Chun half dead while hunting and saved him. What shocked Zhiliao Chun most was that this wasn't the game world he imagined, nor the starter village. These people weren't NPCs or players. They couldn't even see the game windows. To them, Zhiliao Chun just looked like a fool, waving at empty air. Eventually, Zhiliao Chun learned the truth. This was a real world, and no one here could leave. More precisely, no one trapped in the Latinea desert could ever escape. About 10 years ago, Ubule and Sali Li had been hunting a dragon on the Bergama continent when a thunderstorm struck. When they woke, they found themselves here. This place, they said, was the legendary Latinea desert, a prison designed to hold the gods. For humans lost here, the only way to regain freedom was to find the temple of Kaeguli. But the desert stretched like an endless maze. Countless had sought that temple. None had ever returned alive. Over time, those trapped here gave up the thought of escape. Many newcomers like Zhiliao Chun had once refused to listen, determined to leave, yet all perished at the desert's edge. With a sigh, Ubule urged Zhiliao Chun to rest well and abandon any hope of leaving this place. At that moment, Zhiliao Chun found himself believing Ubule's words. He remembered the Dominator saying he was the most interesting opponent it had faced in 100 years, which meant its past encounters were likely humans who had tried to find the temple of Kaeguli. Just then, a system window flashed up. God tier quest triggered. Temple of Kaeguli. Objective: player Zhiliao Chun must earn the protection of the god of Kaeguli to be reborn. In exchange, Zhiliao Chun was tasked with unsealing the god. The quest requirements: locate the legendary temple of Kaeguli in the Latinea desert, slay the sealing beast Nabris, and release the god. Completion reward: the key for player Zhiliao Chun to leave the Latinea desert. By the next day, Zhiliao Chun's wounds had mostly healed. After a night of reflection, his thoughts were finally clear. Like Ubule, he must have suffered some accident in his original world and been dragged into this desert by an unknown force. Somewhere in this desert, a god named Kareguli, was imprisoned. Zhiliao Chen's mission was to find the temple, break the seal, and in doing so, gain the key to escape and, hopefully, return to reality. Pointing to the horizon, Zhiliao Chen asked Sali Li, "That's the Latinea desert ahead, right?" Sali Li replied flatly, "That's only the tip of the iceberg. In truth, we're at the desert's very center. It stretches in every direction." Hearing that, Zhiliao Chen realized how daunting the task was. No wonder no one had found the temple in all these years. If every direction was endless sand, the search would be colossal. So Zhiliao Chen asked Sali Li to take him to the nearby town first, to get familiar with the surroundings. As they made their way along the road, several dark figures suddenly darted into their path. Zhiliao Chen's pupils shrank. He pulled Sali Li aside just in time. As the mist thinned, a group of young thugs in ragged gear emerged. But before Zhiliao Chen could act, Sali Li moved first. Her eyes gleamed coldly as she cast prison of flames, locking her gaze on the youth before them. Then Sali Li turned to warn Zhiliao Chen to stay alert. These weren't ordinary hunters. They were ruthless bandit hunters. Instead of venturing into safe zones of the desert, they lived off, robbing prey from others. Among them, a youth named Baboan was their leader. As she spoke, Sali Li conjured 2 fireballs in her hands. She strode forward, blocking Zhiliao Chen behind her. "Zhiliao Chen, go back and get Grandpa for help." But Zhiliao Chen shook his head. "Sorry, I can't do that. The word retreat isn't in my dictionary. Besides, you saved my life. I won't abandon you." Before he could finish, a massive hand shot out, slamming Zhiliao Chen's head hard against a tree. "Trash, you're awfully cocky. Don't you know Sali Li is mine? A toad like you dares dream of swan meat." Baboan hoisted Zhiliao Chen's head up and sneered, "Boy, around here, talk means nothing." In the next instant, Zhiliao Chen twisted his arm around and caught Baboan's wrist. "So, your sneak attacks are supposed to impress me?" With a surge of strength, he snapped the wrist out of joint, lips curling in disdain. "Looks like you're not so tough after all." Zhiliao Chen followed with a vicious uppercut straight to Baboan's face. Baboan stared at his right hand in shock, never expecting to be dislocated so easily. Even Zhiliao Chen was slightly surprised. He hadn't sensed Baboan's initial punch at all. Soon after, Sali Li explained why Baboan had been hounding them relentlessly. It turned out Baboan had fallen for her at first sight. After being flatly rejected, he refused to give up. And the way Zhiliao Chen and Sali Li had been whispering looked to him like a couple flirting, something he couldn't stand. Baboan jabbed a finger at Zhiliao Chen's nose, taunting him. Did he dare fight a true duel between men? If Zhiliao Chen won, he swore he'd never bother Sali Li again. At that moment, a system window appeared. Side quest triggered. Madness of Shadows. Objective: player Zhiliao Chen must defeat Shadow Assassin Baboan. Reward: map of the Latinea Desert. Zhiliao Chen frowned at the window. He hadn't expected to stumble into a side quest, and the reward was the full desert map. Yet it all felt disturbingly strange. Ever since he entered this world, his fate seemed steered by unseen hands. First being trapped, unable to log out, then being slain, only to resurrect with Kareguli's blessing, then rescued by Ubule and told of the temple's secret. And now, completing this side quest would grant the complete map of Latinea Desert. Taken alone, each event made sense. But strung together, it was too coincidental, like some giant invisible hand pushing Zhiliao Chen forward. Still, there was no turning back. Zhiliao Chen stepped up, declaring, "Fine, then it's settled." Sali Li stared at him, disbelief flashing in her eyes. But since he had agreed, she couldn't argue further. She warned him solemnly. Baboan was the strongest shadow swordsman in the town, wielding the power of darkness itself. His speed was unmatched, his attacks devastating. No wonder he was the bandit hunter's leader. So Sali Li urged Zhiliao Chen to be careful. He only smirked, "Don't worry," and strode into the fight. Seeing Zhiliao Chen unarmed, Baboan casually tossed him a spare longsword. He wouldn't let his opponent use excuses after losing. Zhiliao Chun caught the blade, lips curling. Didn't think you'd play fair for once. Bob Owen's two lackeys exchanged shocked looks. In all the years they'd followed him, they'd never seen their boss so serious. In the next instant, Bob Owen's figure blurred and appeared right in front of Zhiliao Chun. A wave of dark energy wrapped around him, cloaking his whole body. Zhiliao Chun instantly raised his sword across his body, intercepting the fierce strike Bob Owen brought crashing down. Then, in the reflection of his blade, Zhiliao Chun saw something shocking. Another Bob Owen had appeared right behind him. He quickly knocked away the Bob Owen in front, spinning around just in time to block the strike from behind. But under the two-pronged assault, he still took a sword slash. The system blared a warning. HP below 300. Quest will automatically fail. Coughing up blood, Zhiliao Chun immediately cast his healer's active skill, restoring the health he had just lost. The two lackeys sneered openly. He's a healer? And he dares duel our boss. Bob Owen's face twisted with contempt. To him, fighting a healer was nothing but an insult to a shadow assassin. Zhiliao Chun smirked. What's wrong? Too scared, so you make excuses? Turns out you're not just petty, you're a coward too. The words struck home. Bob Owen was completely enraged. With a roar, he split off two more shadow clones. Zhiliao Chun grit his teeth. This bastard could create three of himself? When it would be anything but easy. Worse still, Bob Owen could not only control the clones, but swap positions with them at will. The earlier hit had landed because of that sudden switch. Now, Bob Owen unleashed his full strength, flooding the battlefield with the power of shadow. Bob Owen then ordered his clone on the right, go deal with this worthless trash. In the very next second, a crushing aura surged straight toward Zhiliao Chun. He chose to block first, waiting for the right moment to strike back. But the pressure was heavier than before. The clone before him was clearly enhanced. It held at least 80% of Bob Owen's true strength, and there wasn't just one of them. Almost instantly, another clone materialized behind Zhiliao Chun. In a blink, their figures were less than a hair's breadth apart. Clang! The sound rang out, leaving everyone frozen in disbelief. Even Bob Owen himself was stunned. As the original, he knew full well that strike should have been a guaranteed hit. Zhiliao Chun could hardly believe it either, his face betraying the relief of a narrow escape. Fortunately, the sneak attack triggered his healer's hidden skill, Flash Strike, which blocked one fatal blow and empowered his next attack. Exhaling a shaky breath, Zhiliao Chun muttered to himself, "Too close without that skill, I'd already be a corpse." Bob Owen's lips twisted into a wild grin. He had no intention of holding back anymore. He began chanting an incantation. Suddenly, the long sword in Zhiliao Chun's hand was ripped away. In the next instant, Bob Owen fused his two blades together, forging them into a single new weapon. At once, he and his clones synchronized their intent, unleashing the Shadow Assassin's ultimate skill, Desolation Strike. Purple shadows surged like a raging tide, enveloping Zhiliao Chun. At the same time, a sharp arrow whistled past, aiming straight for him. Zhiliao Chun twisted his body, narrowly dodging. But he was still caught off guard, several fresh cuts opening across his body. A system alert flashed. Warning. Player HP reduced to 2/3. With no weapon in hand, Zhiliao Chun had no way to counterattack. A heartbeat later, blades of shadow intertwined, forming a cage that closed around him. Seeing this, Bob Owen let out a long breath and sneered. "Zhiliao Chun, so that's all you've got. I'll make sure you at least leave a complete corpse." But the next instant, his gaze froze, as though pierced by a terror straight into his soul. Before him, two overwhelmingly powerful figures had appeared. The battlefield fell into absolute silence. At the center stood Ubule, raising his right palm to effortlessly block Zhiliao Chun's thunderous punch. With a light push, he said calmly, "That's enough for today." Bob Owen's voice rose in defiance, laughter booming. "Huh, Ubule, you think you could just walk them out of here? I'm not the same Babo I once was. Madness gleamed in his eyes. Ubule halted for a moment, though he didn't turn around. His voice was cold. If I hadn't blocked Zhiliao Chen's strike just now, you wouldn't even be standing here to talk. Baboan's reason collapsed entirely, disbelief twisting his face. Deep down, he couldn't accept the truth that he had been bested by a healer. At that moment, a system prompt flashed. Side quest complete. Defeat Baboan. Without another word, Ubule led them away from the battlefield. Back at the house, Salili carefully bandaged Zhiliao Chen's wounds before quietly leaving. Yet Zhiliao Chen's mind was clouded with doubt. He had dared to accept the duel because he believed in the auto-heal mechanism after leveling up. But completing the quest hadn't given him a level. Clearly, there was much more about the system he didn't understand. Still, there was good news. The reward map clearly marked the location of the Temple of Kaeguli. Once his wounds healed, he could set out immediately. There was also another reward, a hidden key. According to the system, it required a mystery chesto unlock, and such chests only dropped randomly in battle, never available in the shop. At that moment, Ubule came over to check on Zhiliao Chen's wounds. Zhiliao Chen smiled and said he was fine, that in less than 3 days he'd be fully healed. Then Ubule began telling a story from long ago, on a stormy night more than 10 years past. A grotesque monster had brutally attacked a village. By the time Ubule arrived, only one boy remained alive. The monster was fearsome, strong enough to trade blows with a younger Ubule. In the end, Ubule struck it down and left it badly wounded. Afterwards, he helped the boy bury his family and even took him in as a disciple. Hearing this, Zhiliao Chen immediately realized the boy was none other than Baboan. Baboan had grown up believing his only purpose was to avenge his parents. But Ubule tried to dissuade him, warning that in the Latinea desert, monsters were countless, and the one that killed his parents was just a drop in the ocean. If Baboan pursued vengeance recklessly, he would be killed by other beasts before even reaching the culprit. Because of this clash, he eventually parted ways with Ubule. Finishing his story, Ubule rose slowly, a shadow of sorrow in his expression. Zhiliao Chen's brows furrowed. If even someone as strong as Ubule considered the Latinea desert a death trap, then its true horrors must be far beyond imagination. Though he now held the detailed location of the Temple of Kaeguli, charging in with his current strength might mean dying in the sand before even reaching it. So Zhiliao Chen called after him, "Wait, Grandpa Ubule, I want to become your disciple. Once I grow strong enough, I'll find a way to take you all out of here." Hearing his plea, Ubule didn't stop what he was doing. He only told Zhiliao Chen to rest well. Watching his back, Zhiliao Chen felt discouraged. He had been too impulsive. Even someone as diligent as Baboan had parted ways with Ubule over this. How could a stranger of just 2 days hope for better? Just as regret filled his chest, Ubule's aged voice came through the patter of rain. "Tomorrow morning, wait for me at the hillside. If you can pass the trial, I will take you as my disciple." In truth, Ubule himself was unsettled. His promise had slipped out in a moment of emotion. Yet in that battle, he had witnessed Zhiliao Chen's unyielding will to fight. That one punch had even cracked his strongest defensive skill, the Thunder Shield. Deep down, he felt that perhaps this boy really could lead them out of the Latinea desert. Once Ubule's figure disappeared, the system displayed a new routine quest. The content was simple, basic physical training. At dawn the next morning, before the sun rose, Zhiliao Chen arrived at the hillside to begin his training. At first, he didn't feel tired at all. On the contrary, he was more excited than tackling problems back at school. But after 2.5 hours, he collapsed to the ground, completely drained. Completing the training quest leveled him up, and he allocated his points to intelligence and endurance. Aside from speed, those two stats were crucial for a healer. Just then, Salili walked up carrying breakfast. She had thought Zhiliao Chen had already left to search for a way out of the Latinea desert, but later learned from Ubule that he was still here. Hearing that Ubule had agreed to take him as a disciple, she was surprised. Until now, Abule had only ever accepted Baboan. Countless young men from the town had come seeking tutelage, only to be turned away. What intrigued her even more was what kind of elemental ability Zhiliao Chan would awaken. As he bit into a bun, Zhiliao Chan asked, "But aren't I already a healer? Why would I still need an awakening?" "It's not the same," Solly Lee explained. "Healer is the profession granted to you by the gods. Your elemental attribute, however, must be awakened through training. For example, mine is fire. Abule's is lightning. Baboan was once just a common assassin, but after awakening silver, he became a one-in-a-million shadow assassin. Everyone awakens something different. In short, your profession guides your path, but your element determines your combat skills." At that moment, Zhiliao Chan finally understood. Staying here had been the right choice. What he needed most now was to awaken his elemental attribute. Then, Solly Lee began explaining more about the world itself. It was made up of 5 continents. The one they lived on, Boleses, was the gathering place of humans and the central hub of the world. To the west lay Magara, once known as the homeland of dragon knights. To the north stretched the icy coast Sansado, ruled by giants and raging beasts. In the east was Bergama, where the elves, masters of magic, dwelled. And to the south was Chubanik, home of the dwarves, famed for their unmatched forging arts. That land was also called the End of the World. Beyond Chubanik lay the Endless Sea, a gateway to the divine realm. Legend said that those who crossed it would reach the dwelling place of the gods and be granted limitless power. At first, Solly Lee had dismissed it as nothing more than myth. But ever since being trapped in the Latinea desert, another place thought to exist only in legend, she began to believe those stories might be true. Not long after, Abule appeared before them. He explained that awakening an element was not as complicated as it seemed. One only needed to calm the mind, sharpen the senses, and truly feel the flow of elemental power within. However, before that, Zhiliao Chan would need to pass his trial. As he spoke, Abule inscribed a glowing teleportation array upon the ground. On the other side lay a beast camp at the edge of the Latinea desert. He revealed he had discovered it while hunting, and the trial was clear. Within 2.5 days, Zhiliao Chan must slay the Beast King and bring back its head. Only then would he be acknowledged as worthy. With that, Abule solemnly placed his long-time sword into Zhiliao Chen's hands. Zhiliao Chen took the long sword from Abule's hand, his gaze unwavering. He declared he had no regrets and swore he would pass the trial. With that, he stepped boldly into the teleportation array. At the same time, the system generated a new reality quest based on his choice. On the other side, Abule watched his figure fade, his expression grim. In truth, he hadn't told Zhiliao Chan that only elemental power could harm the Beast King, and such power could only be awakened when pushed to the brink of desperation. As the light faded, Zhiliao Chan found himself in a land of shattered rocks. Unlike the Latinea desert, the ground here was blanketed in black sand. The air carried a pungent, sickening stench. Knowing his current strength was insufficient to take on the Beast King, Zhiliao Chan resolved to hunt lesser monsters first and raise his level. But suddenly, a vine lashed silently toward the back of his head. He twisted aside, just in time, narrowly avoiding the strike. "Didn't expect to be targeted the moment I got here. Looks like Abule's trial won't be simple," he thought grimly. Emerging before him was a winged, green-furred monster. It was the infamous Dotem, one of the strangest creatures in the Latinea desert. Without hesitation, Zhiliao Chan drew the rhombus-shaped longsword Abule had entrusted to him. In the next instant, he charged forward. With a sharp slash, he severed the vine that had just tried to ambush him. He then drove the blade deep into the creature's torso. Power surged as he twisted the sword violently inside its body. Finally, Zhiliao Chan ripped the weapon free, splitting Dotem's body cleanly in half. Ding! A crisp chime echoed as the system notified. Player Zhiliao Chan has slain Dotem. Reward: 35,000 EXP. Level up to 17. Before Zhiliao Chan could even catch his breath, he turned to find an entire horde of Dotems surging toward him. It didn't take long before Zhiliao Chun wrapped up the fight with ease. By then, his level had already risen to 25, just enough to unlock the potion shop. The catch, however, was that unlocking it required him to sacrifice 15 levels, a frustrating cost. If every shop followed this pattern, then as leveling became harder later on, gaining access to new shops would be increasingly difficult. By his calculations, fully unlocking the final mercenary shop would demand a staggering 300 levels in total. From a strategic standpoint, it seemed wiser to prioritize unlocking higher-tier shops early on. Still, even though leveling up felt urgent, Zhiliao Chun chose to unlock the potion shop first. Inside, there was an item called Berserker's Lament, a potion that instantly restored 50% of the user's status bar and continued to regenerate health over the next 10 seconds. Essentially, it granted a second life. Against the Beast King, such an item would be a powerful trump card. After a few purchases, his level dropped all the way back down to 1, since buying from the shop also consumed levels. Thankfully, there was a silver lining. Whenever levels were spent, the attribute points gained didn't disappear. They were fully refunded for redistribution. This allowed Zhiliao Chun to adapt his build for different stages. Preparing for the Beast King, he evenly allocated his most crucial stats. He then opened the general store and bought a few loaves of bread to replenish his stamina. By now, nearly 12 hours had passed, leaving him with less than 2 days until the deadline with Ubule. Meanwhile, Sali Li couldn't understand why Ubule had set such a dangerous trial for him. After all, both her and Baboan's trials had been conducted safely within the village, always under Ubule's watchful eye. In truth, even Ubule couldn't quite explain it himself. His original intention had been to show Zhiliao Chun the dangers of the Beast Den, hoping to discourage him from ever leaving the Latinea desert. But now he realized he carried a selfish hope deep inside, that Zhiliao Chun might succeed, and one day lead them all out of this cursed desert. Meanwhile, Zhiliao Chun had already been walking through the beast grounds for 2.5 hours, and he hadn't even spotted the shadow of a single mushroom. According to the map, Zhiliao Chun realized he was already close to the innermost beast lair. Just then, a cry for help rang out from behind, a mother and her child. They rushed up to him, begging desperately for protection from the monsters chasing them. Zhiliao Chun had no time to wonder why an unarmed mother and child would appear in such a dangerous place. 3 massive monsters were already closing in from ahead. The system window popped up. The 2 dark-colored ones were common low-level monsters in the Latinea desert, known for their high defense and tank-like endurance. The one in the center, however, was far more dangerous. Razadril, a level 40 high-tier beast with rudimentary intelligence, classified as a beast tamer type. It was clear that the Kamons had been summoned through Razadril's beast taming ability. Otherwise, such monsters shouldn't even exist here. Without hesitation, Zhiliao Chun gripped his sword tightly and charged forward. His blade carved a brilliant cross-shaped slash at one of the Kamons. The strike left a deep, searing wound across its body. Though Kamons had formidable defense, their sluggish speed was no match for him. In just moments, one collapsed under his assault. Now, only the leader Razadril remained on the battlefield. Yet with no other beasts around, its taming ability was useless. At this moment, Zhiliao Chun's sword was already pressed against Razadril's throat. He demanded harshly to know why it had been chasing the mother and child. He recalled what Sali Li had once said, that high-tier monsters in the desert could understand human speech. Since the system classified Razadril as such, it should be able to comprehend him. Razadril didn't answer directly. Instead, it sneered, claiming to be a servant of the gods, warning that killing it would bring down a divine curse. At those words, Zhiliao Chun scoffed coldly and flung it aside. He then pressed on, demanding to know the exact location of the beast lair. This time, Razadril complied, pointing toward the distance and saying the black volcano ahead was where the lair lay. But the moment Zhiliao Chun turned his head to look, Razadril suddenly grabbed the throats of the mother and child, gloating, "Strong as you are, you still can't protect them." With that, its entire body surged with power. Zhou Yaochen's gaze turned icy. In the next instant, he lashed out with a lightning-fast kick. Razadril was shattered on the spot, blasted into pieces. Yet in that fleeting moment, Zhou Yaochen sensed another presence, another strong power nearby. Soon, a handsome young man stepped into view. His companions rushed to calm the terrified mother and child. As it turned out, they too had been dragged into the Latinea desert by some mysterious force. The young man was named Brol, a warrior by class. One of his companions was the assassin, Filoga. The other was Luo Qiu, a healer like Zhou Yaochen. Zhou Yaochen then walked back to the fallen Razadril. He stated coldly that he had several questions, and if Razadril answered honestly, it might yet be spared. Faced with the threat of death, Razadril no longer dared act arrogant. From its words, Zhou Yaochen learned a terrifying truth. The monsters here were all stationed under the will of the gods. The gods had told them that any human entering this desert was nothing but food granted by divine decree. Razidra was simply carrying out those orders. Based on what Zhou Yaochen knew from the real world, Khepri was one of the strongest among the 9 pillars of Egyptian mythology, said to be a manifestation of Ra himself. Yet now, he was imprisoned within the desert prison of Latinea. Since Razidra admitted it was ordered to guard this place, and the map pointed to the Khepri temple in another direction, could it be that other gods were also imprisoned near the beast's lair? At that moment, Brol stepped forward, declaring that he too wanted to uncover the secrets of the Latinea desert, and decided to join Zhou Yaochen in slaying the Beast King. Rachel, though a healer, could conjure protective barriers with elemental power, so she stayed behind to guard the mother and child. As for Razidra, it would guide the way, ensuring no time was wasted in the desert. Meanwhile, in the town of Dirks, Ubre approached Bishop Hicks and stated his intentions. Hicks' face instantly darkened. To him, Ubre was insane for placing hope in a boy who hadn't even awakened elemental power. Even if they found the legendary Khepri temple, defeating its guardians was nearly impossible. Worse, angering the gods could doom the entire town of Dirks. Thus, Hicks ordered Ubre to head to the lair at once, kill Zhou Yaochen, and then kneel before the statue of the gods to repent. But Ubre didn't answer. Instead, he coldly asked, "Do you think I don't know your filthy deeds? Those young men you tricked into the Latinea desert, claiming they'd find the Khepri temple, weren't they all sacrifices you sent to die for the so-called gods in exchange for false peace? And the ignorant villagers even hail you as heroes. Hicks, you live by stepping on corpses. Do you feel no guilt?" Hearing this, Hicks' secrets were nearly exposed, and rage overwhelmed him. He raised his hand, intent on killing Ubre. But the gap in strength was too vast. Ubre stood motionless, easily dispelling the attack. "Whether you agree or not, I will fight the so-called gods in my own way." With that, Ubre lowered his hat and walked away. Elsewhere, inside the beast's lair, a group of beastmen dragged out sacrifices to present to their king. Suddenly, a surge of freezing energy shattered the prison cart. Several nearby beastmen were instantly frozen solid. A white-haired man stepped out from the crowd. "I am Archmage Ingam. I've come to set you free." As he spoke, countless jagged ice spears formed before him. It was his signature skill, Storm Ice Blades. Yet the moment those spears neared the Beast King, an unknown force suspended them in midair. Ingam stared in disbelief. The next instant, he too was lifted into the air by that same force. The Beast King lightly flicked a finger. Ingam's body exploded before everyone's eyes. Instantly, all movement ceased. They understood this was a warning, a brutal show of power. To resist here meant only one thing: certain death. Outside the beast's lair, Zhou Yaochen and his companions fought their way through, wiping out nearly 80% of the surrounding beastmen. The closer they got to the lair, the more numerous and powerful the beastmen became. Yet because of this, his level rose rapidly. Before long, they arrived at the entrance of the lair. Zhou Yaochen turned to Razidra once more, confirming if this was truly the entrance. But now, only a broken rope remained behind them, Residra had clearly slipped away during the battle. By now, it must have already gone ahead to alert the Beast King. Still, the foul stench of blood drifting from the cave confirmed this was indeed the lair. After walking for about 10 minutes inside, they encountered no beastmen at all. By logic, Residra couldn't have reported back so quickly. Soon, a new challenge emerged. A three-way split in the tunnel, forcing them to act separately. Brol then traced a magical sigil onto Zhiliao Chen's palm, explaining it was the Gate of Fire Talisman. Should any of them discover a clue or fall into danger, chanting the incantation would teleport them to each other's side. With that, Brol and Faloga chose the left and right passages, while after a brief exchange, Zhiliao Chen stepped into the middle path. The deeper he went, the stronger his sense of unease became. Soon, a creature unlike anything he had ever seen appeared before him. A level 47 monster, the Ghoul Reaper. These were pack hunters with terrifying bite force, and before him now stood at least 100 of them. But soon, he slaughtered the horde, boosting his own level to 14. And because his hidden level had surpassed 50, including those spent unlocking the shop, 3 new class skills were revealed. Pious Holy Light fires a beam of holy light that heals 500 HP while dealing 500 damage to enemies within 3 meters. Damage ignores all armor. Divine Annihilation Slash strikes 20 nearby targets instantly, dealing 60% of their maximum HP as damage, while restoring 5% of that damage as health. Godspeed removes all negative effects and grants accelerated movement for 40 seconds. During this time, each kill restores 3% HP. However, he could only select 2. The combo of Holy Light and Godspeed offered balance, both offense and defense. Meanwhile, pairing Annihilation Slash with Godspeed granted dual recovery, greatly raising survivability in combat. Either way, both builds relied on close combat to sustain health, with Godspeed's acceleration making it the core skill. Now came the choice between Divine Annihilation Slash and Pious Holy Light. Compared carefully, Pious Holy Light had a relatively small attack range, and if it failed to hit the target, it would be almost completely ineffective. Thus, it seemed that the combination of Godspeed and Divine Annihilation Slash was the better option. With both offense and defense in one, it not only ensured Zhiliao Chen had enough output, but also prevented him from recklessly dying in a high-damage environment. At this moment, the Fire Gate sigil in his hand showed no reaction, which meant that Brol and Faloga were likely still safe. Yet on Brol's battlefield, a graceful figure suddenly appeared. She seemed to be the leader of the Ghoul clan, for it was she who used her song to control the ghouls' movements. Moreover, the Ghoul Queen song not only imposed control, but also weakened the stamina of her targets. At this moment, Brol felt as though all the strength in his body had been completely drained. The Ghoul Queen then slowly approached, intending to devour him. She stretched out her massive hand and clamped down tightly on Brol's head. But just then, a figure shot forward, instantly severing the Ghoul Queen's arms. The Queen turned her gaze to Zhiliao Chen, shock written all over her face. "So Derek failed to kill you?" Hearing this, Zhiliao Chen raised his hand and tossed out a severed head. "This should be the Derek you were talking about, right?" He was indeed stronger than an ordinary ghoul. Seeing this scene, the Ghoul Queen could no longer suppress the fury in her heart. She opened her mouth and unleashed a skill resembling a sonic wave attack. At that moment, Brol called out from behind, warning Zhiliao Chen that this was the Queen's chant skill, capable of paralyzing its target. However, just as the casting was completed, a lightning-fast figure streaked across before their eyes, and in the next instant, the Ghoul Queen was decapitated on the spot. Yet before they could breathe a sigh of relief, the Fire Gate sigil in Zhiliao Chen's hand suddenly pulsed with energy. At that time, on Faloga's battlefield, his opponent was not a group of ghouls. Instead, it was a hell serpent with a terrifying level of 55. Prolonged high-intensity defense had already left him on the brink of exhaustion. But once the signal appeared, Zhiliao Chun and Brol quickly rushed over to his battlefield. Immediately, Zhiliao Chun swung his sword forward in a fierce slash. Caught off guard, the Hell Serpent had no time to defend, and the blade struck straight into its forehead. With a shrill howl toward the sky, it collapsed heavily to the ground, completely losing consciousness. Zhiliao Chun then surveyed the surroundings and discovered that apart from the Hell Serpent, there were no other traces of monsters. It seemed that the path Faloga had chosen was indeed the true entrance leading to the Beast King's lair. At this moment, Brol looked at the passage ahead with hesitation, worried that the Beast King might finish them with a single strike. Hearing this, Zhiliao Chun turned to encourage Brol. The first thing to defeat a man is not his enemy, but the fear in his own heart. Besides, this is only a Beast King at the edge of the Latinea Desert. When we truly leave this desert, even stronger monsters will be waiting for us. Only by strengthening our hearts can we seize the chance to regain freedom. At that moment, the Hell Serpent, which had been briefly unconscious, suddenly opened its eyes again. It floated in midair, its gaze sharp and locked onto them. Seeing this, they immediately assumed fighting stances. Brol charged in first. After all, as a warrior, he was best suited to withstand the serpent's initial assault. He leapt forward and delivered a fierce kick straight to the serpent's hardened body. Meanwhile, Faloga used mage skills from the rear to disrupt the serpent's counterattack. A massive stone hand, conjured from rock, descended from above. It clamped tightly around the Hell Serpent's neck. Attacked from both front and rear, the serpent had no chance to notice Zhiliao Chun hidden in the shadows. The next moment, his figure emerged like a phantom. He thrust his sword deep into the serpent's tough scales. With the stacking bonus of their combined skills, he twisted and swept his blade across, tearing open a gash along the serpent's back. The sound of flesh splitting rang out. At last, under the combined effort of the three, they brought down the level 55 behemoth. And since the Hell Serpent was a hidden boss, beyond the massive amount of experience, Zhiliao Chun also obtained a hidden item, the Hellfire Gauntlet. When equipped, his attacks would carry an additional 35 points of fire damage, while also boosting his other attribute points, effectively granting him the equivalent of several extra levels. At that moment, Brol looked at Zhiliao Chun with doubt. Before entering the lair, their strengths had been on par, but since they split up until now, Zhiliao Chun's power had undergone an earth-shaking transformation. He couldn't help but wonder, just what continent did this mysterious powerhouse come from? Just then, a sound echoed from the dark passage ahead. Hearing it, both Zhiliao Chun and Brol immediately shifted into battle stance. The next moment, they moved in unison, both kicking forward. Yet to their surprise, the one emerging from the shadows was Residra, who had already fled before. It explained that during the battle it had struck its head, and in its dazed state, accidentally triggered a trap switch here. That explained why they had run into so many monsters along the way. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ubule pushed open a long-sealed wooden door. Inside lay a set of finely crafted armor. At that moment, Boboin stood behind him. I never thought that after all these years of hesitation, you'd still come here. Long ago, you never allowed Saliri and me to approach this room. So this is where you kept the armor that followed you through half your life. Ubule's tone carried a faint trace of guilt. It's more than just my armor. It carries with it everyone's hope for freedom. Then Boboin revealed his purpose. He had heard that Ubule was forming an advance team to leave the Latinea Desert, so he came here this time to sign up. For in his heart, he hoped that along the way he might find the monster that had killed his parents. Meanwhile, under Residra's lead, we finally arrived at the central lair of the Beast King. Before entering, Zhiliao Chun shared his plan with the other two teammates. Once inside, Residra would first take them to rescue their captured companions. Upon hearing this, Brol and the others refused outright. They would never abandon their comrades at such a dangerous moment. Just as Zhiliao Chun was about to persuade them again. Suddenly, the system displayed a red warning window. Warning: unknown boss-level power detected ahead. With player Zhiliao Chun's current strength, The chance of victory is 10%. Do you wish to terminate the mission? Seeing this, Zhiliao Chen's expression grew solemn. By rights, he had worked hard to level up, and even though he had yet to master elemental power, his odds should not have been as low as 10%. It was precisely this warning that strengthened his resolve. After all, if his solo chance was only 10%, then bringing Brol and the others along would mean nothing but instant death at the Beast King's hands. With this in mind, Zhiliao Chen turned to reject their insistence. Defeating the Beast King is my mission. There's no need for you to risk your lives with me. Besides, following Residra to rescue the captives won't be easy either. At this, Brol clenched his teeth and retorted that Zhiliao Chen was looking down on him. If they were truly cowards, they never would have followed him this far in the first place. In that moment, a strange surge of emotion welled up inside Zhiliao Chen. From childhood to now, whether in study or swordsmanship, he had faced every hardship alone. Though he had never been crushed, he had often felt lonely. But now he tasted something different. For the first time, he had teammates he could entrust his back to. Residra then admitted it would not be safe for it to enter. If the Beast King saw it, death would be certain. Yet under their firm insistence, it joined the three of them in stepping into the central lair. But the moment they entered, an unsettling feeling swept over them. The chamber was completely empty. By all logic, Residra had been caught earlier, so there was no way it could have warned the Beast King. Even Residra itself felt uneasy. Normally this place was heavily guarded, not desolate as it appeared now. And just then, with a thunderous boom, the stone gate behind them slammed shut. At once, a ghostly green light enveloped Faloga, completely restraining him. Then he was lifted into the air by a strange, unseen force. Zhiliao Chen looked up, and before him sat a towering figure. That figure could only be the level 85 Beast King, Fanir. In that instant, Faloga coughed up a mouthful of blood against his will. Seeing this, rage surged uncontrollably in Zhiliao Chen's heart. He gripped his long sword tightly and thrust it straight at the Beast King's face. With a resounding crash, the strike was blocked by Fanir's powerful barrier. Fanir then raised a single finger. With that, Zhiliao Chen was blasted backward. At the same time, Faloga fell from midair and landed in Brol's arms. At that moment, Zhiliao Chen was stunned. His all-out strike had been effortlessly nullified. If it came to a true battle, their chance of victory really was no more than 10%. Just then, Faloga, having recovered slightly, rejoined the fight. He conjured once again a massive hand formed of stone and rubble. Brol leapt onto it, channeling the strength of his legs into the giant hand, one of their combination techniques. But Fanir merely cast a light glance. Instantly, his barrier reappeared, dispelling the attack with ease. On the other side, Zhiliao Chen also swung his sword, sending a blade of energy slashing forth. With a deafening roar, every offensive strike on the battlefield vanished into nothing. Fanir still sat calmly in his place, his barrier completely unbroken. A mocking smile curled at Fanir's lips. Then arcs of sinister lightning crackled between his hands. His barrier expanded outward at terrifying speed. Brol and Faloga had no strength to resist, overwhelmed instantly. Zhiliao Chen too was forced to brace with his sword, using all his might just to stay upright. His face was filled with shock as he stared at Fanir. His power was beyond imagination. What looked like a simple defensive skill actually carried devastating offensive force. And even now, this creature had not shown its full strength. From beginning to end, it had only used one skill, yet left them utterly powerless. Then Fanir suddenly rose, clutching his face as he laughed maniacally. "You pitiful insects! How utterly laughable you are! But since you have come all this way, I suppose I should at least entertain my guests." As he spoke, a thick fog erupted around him. His form faded, disappearing entirely into the mist. What? He vanished? Could this be some kind of stealth skill? At that moment, a beam of light shot at incredible speed toward Brol's side. The beam collapsed and revealed Fanir's true form. Now, Brol stood frozen in terror as Fanir loomed before him, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. Without hesitation, Fanir drove a fist into his abdomen. Brol collapsed to his knees in agony. He clenched his teeth, glaring at Fanir, and struggled to rise with all his remaining strength. But his punch landed in vain. Fanir casually raised his hand, pinching shut all the force in Brol's strike. Brol immediately shifted tactics, launching his signature flying kick. With a heavy thud, he was knocked unconscious, sprawled on the ground. Seeing this, Faloga hurried to drag Brol to safety. Now awake once more, Brol's face was filled with respect, for if Zhiliao Chun had not arrived in time to block Fanir's punch, he would already be dead. And at this point, it was clear the only one capable of even barely standing against the Beast King was Zhiliao Chun himself. At that moment, even Fanir was surprised. It seemed he had underestimated Zhiliao Chun. This was the first time in years that anyone had managed to withstand his attack. As he spoke, he slowly raised his left hand, condensing a dark purple sphere of light. The sphere then morphed into a wave of terrifying energy that blasted straight toward Zhiliao Chen's face. Yet he did not retreat. Instead, he unleashed all his skills at once, meeting the attack head-on. It was a combined technique he had never used before. Immediately after, he dashed forward with the speed granted by Godspeed. For the first time, a trace of fear appeared on Fanir's face. Zhiliao Chen's sword slashed relentlessly across his body, strike after strike. On the final blow, he unleashed his ultimate skill, Divine Annihilation Slash. In an instant, countless lightning-like strands of energy coiled around Fanir's body. With a thunderous boom, Zhiliao Chen's serpentine form flickered past, cutting across from behind him. Panting heavily, he stared ahead. He had already triggered the passive skill Blitz to boost the power of his combined strike. If even this could not wound Fanir, he had nothing left to fall back on. Yet what he did not know was that, in Brol's eyes, he looked like a war god incarnate. Then, a burly figure stepped forward before them. Fanir had cast aside his crown, his flowing long hair only adding to the unfathomable aura he radiated. Seeing this, Residra panicked. As Fanir's longtime underling, it knew all too well that its master was finally serious. He had unleashed elemental power. At that moment, Zhiliao Chun also sensed a familiar pressure. This must be the Beast King's elemental force. The feeling was identical to when he had once faced Bob Owen. With a single sweeping motion, Fanir raised his massive hand. A horrific skull was summoned forth. From within it, countless wolf beasts poured out in waves. Their speed was so great that Zhiliao Chun had no time to evade, forced across his sword in defense. Fanir then summoned a staff crafted from a skull. A mocking smile curled at the edge of his lips. In the next instant, his figure flashed right before Zhiliao Chun. With a deafening boom, the battlefield was drowned in thick fog. Zhiliao Chun's longsword, which he had been using to defend, was blasted from his hands. As the smoke slowly cleared, his body was already covered in wounds of varying size, veins bulging as pained groans slipped from his mouth. Fanir continued to wave his staff, gathering power more terrifying than before. In that moment, Zhiliao Chun gazed at the scene before him in utter despair. Indeed, elemental power brought about a fundamental shift in strength. But now, Zhiliao Chun's body could no longer move, and every attack he had was already spent. Was this truly the place he would die? At this moment, Fanir had fully merged with elemental power, transforming from his Orcish form into the higher form of a werewolf. Unable to dodge, Zhiliao Chun was pummeled like a living sandbag. After a brutal beating, he collapsed to the ground, drained of strength. Fanir let out a grotesque, jijija laugh. He mocked Zhiliao Chun as nothing more than a useless waste. In Zhiliao Chun's eyes now, only the glow of despair remained. Since childhood, classmates had ridiculed the insect-like name his parents had given him. And because he excelled in his studies and was favored by teachers, they piled on cruel nicknames, planting deep seeds of inferiority within him. When he finally summoned the courage to accept his desk mate, Xiaomei's invitation to team up, he ended up trapped in this damned world instead. In that moment, it felt as if the world had fallen silent, and even the last spark of hope to return home had been extinguished. Yet then he thought of his mother. She must be so helpless now. After all, he had already been gone for nearly half a month. He couldn't possibly fall here. His eyes grew calm like still, dead water. Then suddenly, a thunderous rumble echoed around him. Before everyone's eyes, a holy radiance burst forth, and from within it stepped a figure radiating overwhelming pressure. Zhiliao Chun now stood tall, sword in hand, his posture unyielding as if an ancient war god had descended. Yet in his sea of consciousness, his awareness suddenly shifted into a strange, unfamiliar space. Looking around at the scenery, he wondered if he had been killed by the Beast King. But soon, a figure appeared before him. Zhiliao Chun, welcome to my world. I know you want to know where this place is and who I am. But I must regretfully tell you, even I don't know where I came from. I have nearly forgotten how long I've been here. It must have been tens of thousands of years. But when I awoke, a voice told me that one day a young man would appear to take me away from here. And you are the first human companion I have encountered. Zhiliao Chun stared solemnly at the middle-aged man before him. What you say sounds absurd, but can you tell me how to leave this place? Without warning, the middle-aged man dropped to his knees. It's simple. Accept me and become my master. At that moment, Zhiliao Chun no longer cared whether it was true or false. He strode forward. Grasping the man's outstretched hand, he said, "Fine, I accept." Immediately, his consciousness returned to the real world. It seemed the man had not lied. Not only had he truly come back, but a new power was surging through his body. The system prompt appeared / Player Zhiliao Chun has successfully obtained the power of Chaos Element. Then he understood at last. The man was in fact the embodiment of his Chaos Element. His first elemental skill was called Annihilation, sacrificing 90% of his HP to enter Annihilation mode, consuming 100 HP per minute, while each strike carried chaos damage that ignored defense. The accessory his grandfather Ubule had given him was now fully unsealed under the infusion of chaos power. When equipped, it greatly enhanced his mental attributes. At that moment, Fanir looked at him in disbelief. To think that after such grievous injuries, Zhiliao Chun could still stand, appearing completely unscathed. Then, his figure flashed once more as he charged straight toward Fanir. Sensing an oppressive force pressing upon him, Fanir chose to go all out, fully unleashing his elemental power. Yet this time, his barrier infused with elemental force was blasted apart in an instant. Fanir then gripped his staff tightly and launched another counterattack. To him, Zhiliao Chun was far too terrifying an existence. So in this moment, he poured every ounce of his strength into a single goal, to utterly crush him here. But Zhiliao Chun simply wielded his longsword, tracing arcs through the air as he unleashed a fusion skill of elemental power, Elemental Blitz. Blades of energy rained down like lightning, carving indelible wounds across Fanir's body. Immediately after, he sacrificed 90% of his HP and entered Annihilation mode. A thunderous slash tore not only through the silence of the air, but also shattered the Beast King's mask, the very symbol of Fanir's reign. Congratulations, player Zhiliao Chun, for defeating Beast King Fanir. You have gained 400,000 experience points. Beast King quest completed. Reward: 1 black chest. At that moment, since the system prompt was visible only to him, Brol and the others saw nothing but a flash of eerie green light. Residra, however, was utterly shaken. Born and raised in this lair, he knew Fanir's strength better than anyone. He had always believed Fanir to be the strongest being in the land. Were it not for witnessing it today, he never could have believed there existed someone even stronger. Even Zhiliao Chun himself could hardly believe it. He had actually defeated Beast King Fanir. Yet instead of joy, what rose within him was a lingering sense of dread. Just like before, The man who granted him elemental power had only appeared when he was in dire straits. Could it be that his arrival in this world was orchestrated by someone pulling the strings behind the scenes? Glancing at the appointed time, Zhiliao Chun turned to tell Brol and the others, "I'll go ahead to rescue the captives. You're badly injured, so stay here and wait." But just then his body suddenly grew faint and hazy. When he awoke again, he found himself back in that familiar wooden house. A searing pain surged straight to his head. He remembered catching a glimpse of his grandfather Ubule at the last moment, so it must have been him who brought him back. But what of Brol and Residra? At that moment, a system prompt appeared / "There is still an unopened chest in your inventory." This reminded him that after completing the quest to defeat Boboin, he had received a mysterious key, perfect for unlocking the newly acquired black chest. But the items he had opened before had all been of ordinary quality. As golden light seeped from the cracks, the system announced / "legendary hidden item obtained." Yet to his surprise, the so-called legendary hidden item turned out to be an egg. Soon, cracks of varying size began to spread across its surface. With a sharp crack, a little boy with horns on his head broke out from within. And without any surprise, the little boy called Zhiliao Chun Dad. Feeling puzzled, Zhiliao Chun immediately asked the system to check the boy's origin. Yet the system displayed that there was no permission to identify the creature's information for now. It could only be accessed after an upgrade. It also reminded him that the hatched creature had already bonded with him and must be carefully cared for. Seeing this, he grew defiant and tried to throw the boy aside. But in the very next second, the boy burst out crying. Immediately, the system issued a warning / "Player Zhiliao Chun has been detected attempting to abandon this creature," commencing punishment. In the next moment, his figure was transported into an Arctic wasteland. And right before him stood an elite-class monster, the Icefield Marauder. The punishment was clear. He had to kill all the marauders within 30 minutes. If he failed, he would face double the monsters in a combined assault. And if the boy was attacked and killed during this period, Zhiliao Chun would be erased by the system. At this moment, disbelief filled his eyes. Was this so-called legendary reward egg truly a prize? It was more like a trap set to kill him at any moment. With no choice, he scooped the boy into his arms. He told the boy firmly, "You must hold on tight to me. If you die, I won't survive either." Then he drew his long sword from his backpack. Meanwhile, Ubule was discussing with Boboin about forming a team to search for the Temple of Kebuli. But the situation was dire, and almost no one was willing to join. After all, countless lives had proven that opposing the gods only led to death. And for so long, they had been brainwashed by Hicks's lies, making it nearly impossible to break free from their entrenched beliefs. As things stood, the plan to seek the temple had to be put on hold. With only a few of them, leaving the Latinea desert was nearly impossible. In the end, they decided to first check if Zhiliao Chun had woken up. Meanwhile, Zhiliao Chun finally managed, just in time, to wipe out all the Icefield Marauders. Soon after, his figure returned once more to the wooden house. At that moment, Salalai also pushed open the door. Her eyes suddenly lit up. Excited, she scooped up the little creature perched on Zhiliao Chun's head. "Zhiliao Chun, where did this child come from?" Hearing her question, he hastily made up an excuse, claiming he had found the boy by chance in the beast's lair. Soon after, Boboin and Ubule arrived, both equally intrigued by the little creature. But since Zhiliao Chun had only just woken up, Ubule asked Salalai and Boboin to go to the kitchen first and prepare some food. Then, Ubule solemnly apologized to Zhiliao Chun. It was his carelessness. He had not expected such a high-level monster to be hidden within that beast's blood. His oversight had nearly cost Zhiliao Chun his life. Zhiliao Chun only smiled faintly. "This isn't your fault, Grandpa Ubule. That trial was a choice I made after careful thought. Besides, if not for that test set up by your men, I might never have obtained the power of chaos so soon." He then recounted in detail the entire process of how he had gained his elemental power. After hearing it, Ubule's expression grew extremely grave. He explained that elemental power could not be carried into any spatial realm, nor could one meet anyone within it. As for the so-called chaos element, he had only ever read of it in an ancient text. According to legend, tens of thousands of years ago, the evil god Morpheus descended upon the mortal world. Chaos, slaughter, and evil engulfed all, and humanity, struggling to survive, was forced to wage war against him. But Morpheus was far too powerful. The heroes of mankind could not withstand the demonic legions under his command. At humanity's darkest hour, a warrior named Hilda stepped forth. Wielding the chaos element, he was strong enough to subdue even the demon legions. After countless battles, Hilda's army finally severed the head of the evil god Morpheus. His soul was forever sealed within the hellish prison of Tartarus. Yet, as the price of the seal, Hilda remained trapped there for eternity. Thus, Zhiliao Chun surmised that the man he encountered was very likely the legendary human hero Hilda, for the man's story bore a striking resemblance to the legend. Ubule then urged him not to reveal this matter to anyone else until the full truth was known. After their conversation, Zhiliao Chun took the little creature to the dining room. Since the boy kept muttering, "Uruka," he temporarily gave him that name. To his surprise, Residra had also returned. Given Residra's deep knowledge of the Latinea Desert's terrain, having him as a guide would save them much trouble. Meanwhile, Brol had been sent to the town's healing station. Meanwhile, in a distant castle, the underworld king Hades sensed that the energy belonging to Fenrir in the Latinea Desert had suddenly vanished. This meant Fenrir had very likely been slain by humans. But as things stood, there was no way the humans there had the power to defeat Fenrir. Thus, Hades ordered his subordinate Argolis to head to the Latinea Desert and investigate the matter. The next day, Zhiliao Chun arrived at the town together with Boboin and the others. It was then that Salalai finally voiced the question that had been troubling her for so long. Zhiliao Chun, what element did you awaken to defeat the Beast King? Zhiliao Chun simply replied that he wasn't quite sure. Then he asked, generally speaking, what elements do priests usually awaken? Salalai explained that priests were usually attuned to light, though in rare cases, some awakened other elements, water being the most common alternative. After a moment's thought, Zhiliao Chun said he must have awakened the light element. After all, Ubule had warned him never to reveal that he had obtained the power of chaos. Soon, they reached their destination, the healing center of Delkstown. But the instant Zhiliao Chun stepped through the doorway, a green magical glow enveloped him tightly. In the blink of an eye, he was transported to a strange place. As he stood in confusion, a cold voice spoke from behind. Don't be surprised, boy. This is nothing more than a simple teleportation spell. The speaker revealed his identity. Hicks, the guardian of Delkstown. And this place was one reserved only for the strongest within the Latinea region. Zhiliao Chun feigned ignorance and replied, I'm just an ordinary passerby. Why don't you tell me directly what you want from me? Hicks came clean. He knew that Zhiliao Chun had nearly single-handedly slain the Beast King, and so he wanted to invite him to join the Guardians. If he agreed, they would grant any request he made. Zhiliao Chun didn't hesitate. He turned and walked away. Sorry, I have no interest in what you're offering. What I want is to leave this damned Latinea desert. Hicks was instantly enraged. He had already seen that Zhiliao Chun was aligned with Ubule. If that was the case, there was no need for further words today. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Boboin suddenly sensed a dangerous aura in the air. A moment later, a massive black hand appeared out of nowhere, wrapping around Salalai's waist. Luckily, Boboin reacted quickly and struck the hand away with a skill. At that instant, a mysterious figure cloaked in black appeared before them. At the same time, Zhiliao Chun's battle with Hicks erupted. Yet with the little dragonling in his arms, he was unable to fight back properly. His mind was full of questions. As fellow humans, shouldn't they be finding a way to escape this place together? Why waste time fighting each other? Hicks only gave a cold, derisive laugh. So, that old man Ubule never told you the truth? The so-called guardians are nothing but a name. He went on to explain that they had long since struck a deal with the monsters. Every so often, they would hand over some of the townspeople for the monsters' use. And when monsters hunted near the town, the guardians merely turned a blind eye. Abule had known about this all along. In his mind, sacrificing a portion of the week to preserve the town's peace was acceptable. Hicks's grin grew more deranged as he insisted this was the perfect solution and asked whether Zhiliao Chan would join them. Zhiliao Chen's eyes turned icy cold. "Sorry, but I have no intention of becoming a cowardly turtle like you," Zhiliao Chen replied coldly. "No matter how powerful these so-called monsters or gods of yours may be, I will return no matter what." With that, he set Aruka down beside him. "Wait here. Once I deal with this man, I'll take you away from this place." Seeing this, Hicks urged him to give up the struggle. If he continued to be so stubborn, Hicks said he would make sure Zhiliao Chen slept here forever. The moment his words fell, Zhiliao Chen's fist roared forward, smashing straight through Hicks's body. The searing pain made Hicks's eyes bulge wide. In the next instant, his body was sent flying. Hicks could hardly believe it. What was this young man's true origin? Meanwhile, Bob Owen and the others had also defeated their opponents. Just as they breathed a sigh of relief, a shadow suddenly appeared behind Salalai. It turned out the figure they had struck down earlier had only been one of the black-robed man's clones. At the critical moment, Zhiliao Chun lashed out with a powerful kick, hurling the black-robed man backward. Seeing Zhiliao Chun appear, the black-robed man knew instantly. Hicks must have already been defeated. With that, he turned once more into a swirl of darkness and vanished from sight. When they returned to the village, Salalai relayed every detail of what had happened to Abule. Abule's expression was grave. He deduced that their enemies had been Hicks, a wind element mage, and Lucius, a shadow element mage, both of them guardians of the town. Bob Owen was utterly confused. If they were guardians, why would they attack us? Abule slowly explained. Apart from Hicks and Lucius, there were two more companions. One of them was Polyp, hailed as the strongest mage of the Brazes continent. They were the first humans to arrive in the Latinea desert, and the town itself had been built by their hands. Back then, the desert was even more perilous than now. The first settlers had to escape monsters' pursuit while constantly guarding against ambushes from fellow humans over food and shelter. At that time of crisis, Polyp discovered the last oasis beneath where the town now stood. He distributed seeds to the people, taught them to farm, and later established a complete governing system as the town grew. From then on, any desire to leave the Latinea desert was treated as a threat to the town's survival. At this point, Zhiliao Chen cut in. These men struck a deal with the monsters, offering up innocent people as sacrifices in exchange for this so-called peace. Grandpa Abule, you must have known about this all along. Why did you choose to hide it? His words made Abule's face darken. He admitted that Zhiliao Chan was right. He had indeed condoned this filthy arrangement. But he explained that he had no choice. On one side was the family he could never abandon. On the other was his sense of justice. For anyone, it was an unbearably difficult decision. And in the end, Abule chose his loved ones. In truth, most people would do the same. No one would forsake their closest kin merely to protect strangers. Years ago, Hicks and the others had threatened him with Salalai and Bob Owen's lives. If he dared expose the secret, he would lose them forever. Zhiliao Chen's voice came slowly but firmly. If one had the strength to protect loved ones and uphold justice at the same time, then this so-called dilemma wouldn't exist at all. So, Grandpa Abule, the real reason you compromised was because you believed in your heart that you could never defeat the four guardians, wasn't it? Zhiliao Chan then pressed further. If back then they had forced you to choose between Salalai and Bob Owen, which one would you have chosen? After asking, he added an earnest apology. This is just how I've always thought since childhood. If my words offended you, then I apologize. Abule shook his head, saying there was no need for Zhiliao Chan to apologize. The one who truly owed an apology was himself. He had indeed wronged countless innocent humans. He admitted that he had long accepted being trapped here forever. But ever since meeting Zhiliao Chun, hope had begun to burn again in his heart. He then laid out the next step of their plan. If they wished to leave the town, the first thing they had to do was shake the rule of the four guardians. The wind element mage Hicks, whom Zhiliao Chun had defeated earlier, was only the weakest of the four. The remaining three would not be so easy to handle. And from what Ubule knew of their temperaments, once Hicks recovered, he would certainly come seeking revenge. Therefore, in the days to come, all three of them would have to undergo Ubule's hellish training. Only by defeating the four guardians would they be qualified to face the even greater threats lurking within the desert. After finishing these matters, Zhiliao Chun went alone to a hillside to clear his head. He still had 50 unallocated stat points from slaying the Beast King. At present, activating the Chaos Element skill consumed 90% of his health. Though it granted armor-ignoring true damage, the remaining 10% health made the risk of being one-shot sky-high. Fortunately, Berserker Intelligence Potions could restore his health, and they were available for direct purchase in the shop. So he decided to abandon health and defense for now, pouring all his points into offense. Once he gained powerful recovery skills, he would reconsider raising his HP. After finishing his allocations, he noticed a new unread message. Opening it, he found 100 messages from an account named Exploding Sweetheart. Zhiliao Chun remembered that Exploding Sweetheart was none other than Lu Ruyan's in-game ID. Could it be that he could finally contact the outside world? Thinking this, he hurriedly opened the message window. There, he learned that other classmates had also gone missing after playing this game, never returning to school. What shocked him more was that Lu Ruyan had never revealed his disappearance. Instead, she said that one day a bald man appeared at school and told them that Zhiliao Chun and his mother had moved to another city. And indeed, during that time, his mother had chosen to move. Piecing things together, he quickly formed a theory. Perhaps his consciousness was trapped in this cursed Latinea desert, while his body remained in the real world. Most likely, his body survived in a vegetative state, and his mother had moved to find a hospital capable of caring for him. Yet the theory didn't add up. The best hospitals in the country were in their old city. Besides, he was sure his mother didn't know any bald man. Just as his head felt like it was about to explode from overthinking, the little dragonling suddenly crept up beside him. Without thinking, he pushed the dragonling away. Instantly, the system displayed a warning backslash. The dragonling has been made to feel hurt. Punishment activated. The next moment, Zhiliao Chun was teleported into a volcanic map. Though caught off guard, he realized this could serve as an excellent training opportunity. Meanwhile, inside the healing station, Brol looked on with sheer disbelief. During the day, Ubule specifically reminded Brol of one thing. He must keep it secret and never reveal the details of how Zhiliao Chun slew the Beast King. Yet what shocked Brol most was that Ubule, one of the fabled 12 heroes, was also trapped in the Latinea desert. Back on his own continent, Ubule had once single-handedly defeated the terrifying troll Kipa and was renowned as the mightiest lightning warrior. The so-called 12 heroes were truly the 12 strongest individuals in the entire world. Every 5 years, the world's strongest tournament was held. Each guild would send 5 champions, and the 12 guilds that made it to the finals, regardless of victory or defeat, would each choose one hero to represent them. Back then, Ubule had been part of a newly formed minor guild, yet they fought their way into the finals. In that battle, only Ubule survived. Later, he ventured alone into the Black Sea, slew the troll Quink, and then retired. Who could have imagined that such a hero would also be trapped in the Latinea desert? Even someone like Ubule had no way out. Meanwhile, Zhiliao Chun finally managed to complete the system's punishment. But this time, the difficulty was far greater than before. Ding! The system prompted backslash. Each time punishment is activated, the difficulty increases by 10%. Zhiliao Chun sighed helplessly. It seemed best not to provoke the little one again. At that moment, the dragonling was staring at the system window with a strangely thoughtful expression. Zhiliao Chun was startled. Could it be that the little one could actually see the system? Before he finished speaking, the dragonling gave a clear, affirmative reply. This only deepened his confusion. Even a powerhouse like Ubule couldn't perceive the system, yet this dragonling, not even human, could. Could his origins be far more extraordinary than imagined? Thinking back, it was right after the dragonling appeared that he first began receiving messages from Lu Ruyan. Just as his thoughts grew tangled, Ubule arrived with Boboan, ready to begin training. With him came a now fully recovered Brol and Faloga. Ubule declared solemnly that the training ahead would be unimaginably harsh, so difficult that even the 12 heroes might not have been able to complete it. With a wave of his hand, he produced a mysterious artifact. In an instant, a perfect duplicate appeared before each of them. This was a training device created by the Grand Mage Holinkum, designed for guild tournaments. It could generate a clone identical to the trainee, equipped with 1.5 times the power in skills and elemental force. Though the clones would not cause real physical harm, the pain they inflicted was absolutely real. And since this was team training, once anyone took a fatal blow, they would be eliminated immediately, leaving the rest to fight outnumbered. Ubule explained that this wasn't him intentionally raising the difficulty. It was to prepare them. On the path to the temple, every fallen comrade meant the survivors would face an even harsher reality. This was a trial they could not skip. Once they all entered the training, Ubule returned to the house and instructed Laxivler to prepare a larger dinner. He added that it should be done quickly. He expected they would be back soon. Sure enough, after only half an hour, the entire group returned. Laxivler was baffled. He knew exactly how punishing Ubule's training was supposed to be, but never imagined they would finish so quickly. After dinner, Ubule asked about the results of the training. They all couldn't help but complain. Yes, they had finished in under 30 minutes, but only because they couldn't last that long before being defeated by their doppelgangers. Especially Zhiliao Chen's clone. Even 5 of them together might not be able to bring it down. Zhiliao Chen then analyzed the fight. It hadn't felt like simple PvE at all, but more like a true PvP duel. The opponents weren't brainless monsters. From the very start, the 5 clones had split up, scattering to hide in different directions. At first, Zhiliao Chen thought the clones' goal was simply to split them up and pick them off one by one. So the 5 of them stuck together the entire time. But unexpectedly, that was exactly what the clones had planned. He alone was pinned down by 4 clones, helplessly watching as his own clone eliminated his teammates one after another, until he was left to face all 5 clones alone. From the very beginning, this battle had been doomed. Ubule admitted that even the 12 heroes themselves might not be able to complete such a challenge. He praised Zhiliao Chen, saying this was precisely the effect he had hoped for. True team battles aren't about raw individual strength, but about unleashing the full potential of the group, like pieces on a chessboard, with some meant to attack and others to defend. The clones followed this principle, creating a highly efficient team strategy. To Ubule, it was the simplest and most effective tactic, more than enough to overwhelm a rookie team like theirs. After that, he told everyone to rest in their rooms. Tomorrow morning, there would be another round of training, and this time he would lead them personally. Back in his room, Zhiliao Chen began to review and analyze the day's training once more. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed from above his head. It felt just like the voice of that heroic man he had met before. He looked around but saw nothing. With no other choice, he lay down and continued reflecting on the training. Then the voice came again. Just as I thought, compared to that Beast King who relied only on brute force, these clones clearly have far sharper minds. When he came back to his senses, he found himself standing in a mysterious realm. And right before him stood the same heroic man. Seeing the confusion on his face, the man reassured him not to be so curious. This place was Zhiliao Chen's inner spiritual world. Since the moment he became Zhiliao Chen's master, he had been bound to remain here forever. At this point, the man no longer hid his true intention. He admitted that he could have chosen to remain here forever, never revealing anything to Zhiliao Chen. But the reason he appeared now was for one purpose, to make him stronger. As he spoke, the man raised his hand and displayed just 1% of the power of chaos. Then he revealed a brutal truth. The chaos force Zhiliao Chun had unleashed against the Beast King had only reached 1,000th of its true power. The moment his words fell, the system window appeared /Trial of the Lord of Chaos. Survive for 3 minutes without being defeated to claim victory. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Hicks was still recovering from his injuries. Yet new intel arrived. Ubule was openly recruiting in town. If this continued, more and more humans would begin to dream of leaving. With that in mind, they decided to summon the desert monsters into the town, letting the wanderers of Latinea deliver a harsh warning. Meanwhile, Zhiliao Chan was undergoing the chaos trial. He thought to himself, sorry, old man. If I can just avoid fighting for 3 minutes, I'll secure the 400,000 EXP first. Then I can train however I want later. But something felt wrong. Why wasn't the old man chasing him? A bad premonition surged in his chest. The next second, a blinding light burst above his head. The ground where he had just stepped split open into a massive chasm. This isn't training, it's an execution. If not for borrowing the Beast King shield for that 0.5-second reaction window, he would have already been smashed into paste. Then the old man's voice thundered. Are you trying to avoid facing me head-on? Zhiliao Chun barely managed to block the strike and muttered inwardly, I really underestimated him. The old man roared coldly. Such cowardly fleeing is unforgivable. Just as he prepared to strike again, Zhiliao Chun suddenly pointed behind him. Old man, look, what's that? In the same instant, he spun and bolted away at full speed. Glancing at the countdown, he saw 2 minutes left. Just a little longer, and the trial will be mine, he thought. Hey, old man, can't we take a break first? Let me rest a few minutes before we fight again, he shouted. The old man's face was ice cold. Why are you always running? An enemy would never give you the chance to breathe. The words had barely left his mouth when he flickered, appearing instantly behind Zhiliao Chun. This is your first lesson, Zhiliao Chun. Acting fast, Zhiliao Chun unleashed Flash Strike, narrowly dodging the attack. Relief washed over him. Good thing it was a physical blow just now. Using Flash Strike, a guaranteed hit skill, was the only way to escape unscathed. The old man looked at Zhiliao Chun in shock. How did this kid suddenly appear behind him? He hadn't caught any trace of movement. It felt more like teleportation. Could it be? Meanwhile, Zhiliao Chun was calculating the remaining time. His skill cooldown was 5 minutes. If the old man attacked again, this trial would fail. Count down, 30 seconds. He lowered his weapon and said, let me rest for a bit before we continue. After this, I swear I won't run again. The old man agreed. Fine, but you must tell me what that move was just now. Zhiliao Chun thought to himself, what move? He must mean Flash Strike. At that moment, the system notification appeared. Countdown complete. Trial cleared. 400,000 EXP earned. Host level increased. Zhiliao Chun quickly explained, that's all it was. These are just skills granted by the system. When I leveled up, I used Flash Strike to dodge your attack. Why? Is there something wrong with it, old man? The old man frowned. I don't understand what you're saying, but that Flash Strike, I feel like I've seen it before. Zhiliao Chun was puzzled. Could it be that someone else has used this skill before? The old man thought hard. His body remembered something during the fight. It felt so familiar. But when? Against whom? Damn it, he still couldn't recall. Zhiliao Chun guessed. Ubule once told me the legend of Hesiod. If this old man gave me the power of chaos, then he must be Hesiod. Knowing his name might help him recover his memory. He said aloud, right, old man, I think I know who you are. You are Hesiod, the man who once slew the evil god Morpheus and saved the world. Well, old man, does that jog your memory? The old man's heart trembled. Hesiod, why does that sound so familiar? Meanwhile, outside, Bobolin got up in the middle of the night. He caught a foul stench in the air. Suddenly, he remembered what it was. Before he could react, a dark shadow lunged at him. It was the Wanderer, launching a sneak attack under cover of night. Bobolin's hatred flared. There was no mistake. It was him. This was the beast that killed his parents. Even if it turned to ash, he would never forget. He had trained relentlessly all these years for this moment. He never thought the creature would walk right into his grasp. Bob Owen gripped his weapon tightly, snarling, "I'll tear your skin apart piece by piece, break your bones one by one, and spill your blood on my parents' graves." The next second, he launched his attack. Meanwhile, the Guardians in the shadows watched mockingly, amused at how well their plan was unfolding. Hicks frowned. "But the town is still intact, and only they're being attacked. Won't that look too fake?" The man in black sneered. "You've gotten cautious, Hicks. I've already summoned other beasts into the village. Once we draw Ubule over, Dollop himself will kill him. Hicks, deal with those newcomers. And this time, don't hold us back. As for that new priest kid, he's mine. I just hope he lasts long enough. If it ends too quickly, there's no fun in it." Meanwhile, in the inner realm, Zhiliao Chun said firmly to the old man, "You must be Hesiod. The place where I freed, you could only be Tartarus." "Well, old man, does that bring anything back?" The old man replied calmly, "No, my mind is still blank." Zhiliao Chun was stunned. This doesn't make sense. In every anime or movie, just knowing the name is supposed to awaken lost memories. The old man said flatly, "I have no impression of this world at all. A name is just a label. Even if I am Hesiod, I can't remember what I once experienced. But your move, for the first time, it gave me a sense of familiarity, like I finally found a thread that ties me to this world." Zhiliao Chen thought to himself, "And what about me? Why did I come here? Why was I able to free him? Why was I granted the power of chaos?" These mysteries pile up one after another. If the old man truly is Hesiod, then once he regains his memory, maybe he'll have the answers I've been searching for.